All right, this is Hubert, and this is a bully stick. Don't give your dogs rawhides. Get bully sticks instead. This is the roadmap to success. This is roadmap to success, if I can speak. It is Saturday. Duke is outside chilling. He went on a little bit of a walk, and he was a little bit frustrated with the walk because he likes to pull on the walk. So we incorporated a martingale collar, and I showed the guardians how to add a special twist to the leash to keep them from pulling. So basically, when I sat down to ask about the situation, I learned that the dogs really didn't have very many rules. And as a result of no rules, they saw themselves as peers with their humans. And all the dogs are pretty well behaved most of the time. There are times, like when we're at the beach or somebody comes to the house, they get a little bit, I wouldn't even say territorial, but I think there's some territorial perceptions. I think the dogs think that they need to be in charge of security to contribute to the group. So what we need to do is basically demote them. And we're going to accomplish that by giving them rules and consistently enforcing them. Remember, we have a window of 3 seconds to either correct or reward the dog for the dog to understand what it is being corrected or rewarded for. And also, whenever I correct or redirect a dog, I always try to end it by putting them into a position they're doing something that they know how to do, so I can give them a positive reinforcer. So if they're on the couch, when I say off, as soon as they get off the couch, I might pet them and say down. So I'm associating getting down off the couch gets a reward. Or just ask them to sit once they get off the couch and then sitting, so we're not focused on the negative part, we're on something positive. Okay, so the rules that I suggest: no furniture for at least 30 days or as long as these problems are still going on. Another rule would be having to sit before getting in or out of the door. Another rule would be not being allowed to be within 7 feet of any human that is eating. Speaking of food, I'd like the guardians to start feeding the dogs a little bit of structure. So the humans are going to eat first, and then we're going to feed whichever dog is calmest next. If you want to lean back and maybe put your knees up, you can. I talk for a while. It's hard to be a cameraman for me or when I'm doing the roadmap to success. All right, so some of the other techniques we went over is I'd like the guardians to start petting the dogs with a purpose. These dogs had no problem getting all in their human's business, climbing up on top and sticking their heads in their crotches and all that fun stuff. And they're just asking for love, but it's still indicative of the dog telling the humans what to do, which is related to the dogs thinking that they can tell other people what to do in terms of staying away from our humans, or I'm reactive to you if you're near us on the beach or what's. So basically, I'd like the guardians to start petting their dogs with a purpose. Instead of petting the dog because the dog tells me to do it, I'm going to give it a counter order. When it does what I ask it to do, I'm going to pet it and I'm going to say just the command word. Just sit, just down, just here, or come, or whatever it is. After a while, the dog would come and sit in front of you and start pre-paying, saying, looking, I'm sitting, asking for some attention. Can you scratch behind this ear? We want to do that as much as we can. Doesn't mean that we guaranteed are going to do it, but now the dog is asking us, and it's paying for this attention with obedience as opposed to trying to take it. Okay, guardians also use passive training. One of the dogs does not like to go into the car. Now, I think part of it is he can't get into the car physically, and I think he's a little frustrated about that. So taking some weight off of him and also providing him with a ladder or a box to jump up onto should help with that. But if every time the dog comes to me and I pet Duke and say here, where I would suggest changing the word from come to here, and we do it in the house. Well, then when I say here in a different capacity, well, it's associated with getting affection and getting a treat, and it comes at times where it's not anything against what I want to do, so I'm inclined to do it. And once we get enough of that repetition going, they're more inclined to do it. Now, for we went over the video on slow treat delivery speed to stop him from grabbing. We also went on a walk. I suggested the guardians use my 4 rules for a structured walk. Rule number 1 is give each dog a position. So each dog is always on the right or always on the left, so then we're on a walk, they know this is where I'm supposed to go. Rule number 1, rule number 1 of the 4 rules is to keep your arm relaxed and going straight down. If you're pulling the dog in a position with the leash, you're activating their opposition reflex. They're guaranteed going to pull against you. It's not going to be a fun walk. Rule number 2, keep the dog's front shoulder aligned with your hip. If it gets in front of you and you pull back on the leash, it will cause the dog to pull forward. So when we correct, we're going to bend, make sure we bend at the elbow, and it's a quick jerk, a pop, and then immediately taking the tension off. One of the guardians was a little bit slower on his up, and also doing it a little bit late. And that combination caused the dog to continue to pull forward. So we want to make sure that we are keeping the dog's shoulder aligned with our hip, and before it gets out of position, we do that quick correction, then immediately relax our leash. We don't want to leave tension on the leash. One of the guardians who is filming right now was holding the leash while she was trying to put the dog in sit. She was keeping tension on the line. So always keep that tension off of the line. The only time there should be tension is that fraction of a second when we're correcting. Now I think the guardians are going to have me come back and we're going to teach the dog to walk with a loose leash, which is much more enjoyable. Let me see. The rule number 1, keep your arm relaxed. Rule number 2, keep the dog's shoulder next to your hip so it's in position. Rule number 3 is no stopping and sniffing. They can sniff, but if they stop and sniff and I stop, then they told me what to do and they're driving. So they can sniff as they go. Window sniffing, kind of like what you do window shopping. Rule number 4 is no marking. Every place your dog pees on as a male, he's asserting himself and saying this is either mine or my territory or I'm available to make little puppies. And any of those things are related to him thinking that he is in charge. So we're going to let him pee before we go on the walk and not on the walk and then pee when we get back. Now I walk next to things the dog wants to mark. I just don't stop. And if he starts to, I might give a quick correction of the leash. Now Duke was also kind of, he was the one we took on the walk. He was also trying to set the tone. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll jog in between one set of driveways, then I'll walk really slow between the next set, and then I'll walk a normal pace of speed. So I vary it up so the dog never knows and it has to change its rate of speed to match me. The other thing I do is I carry a bunch of treats. Every once in a while, for no apparent reason, I just stop till the dog sit. When it sits, I put the treat in its mouth, say sit, and then we can keep on walking. So if we do that enough, after a while the dog's like, when we stop, if I sit down, I'm going to get a treat. And they'll start sitting automatically. Make sure you keep on rewarding it and say the word sit. Use passive training. If you stop and he sits on his own, make sure you pet him and say sit and reward those desired behaviors so they continue to engage them. Let's see. We want to use the escalating consequences to disagree. The first one is we're going to hiss. Second thing we do is stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog. As soon as it's stationary, take 2 steps back, left, right, or right, left. And then you can go back to doing what you're doing. Third consequence is to march directly at the dog. Don't stop, but move very briskly directly at the dog until the dog turns sideways to you or greater. As soon as it turns sideways, we stop. Then we go back to the second consequence of it, and we pivot our hips and wait for that to be stationary. As soon as it's stationary, then we can take 2 steps back and go back to whatever we're doing. The fourth consequence, actually, I think I forgot about this one when we were talking about it, is I give the dog a leash timeout. Put the dog on a leash, and I step on the leash with my foot, give them about 3.5 feet, just enough room so they can stand and sit comfortably. We don't have to dip. We don't want them to have to lean over. And they might throw a temper tantrum. If they do, just stand out with both leashes. One of the guardians is a little petite. She might have to hug the other one to have enough ballast to keep the dog from going away. Once it gets done flopping around, it'll sit down, but it'll sit as far away as the leash will allow. When it does that, if it's sitting here, I take the foot that's on a leash and I slide it towards the dog to take the tension off of the leash so we don't activate the opposition reflex. I don't tell it to sit. A minute or so later, it will lay down. When it lays down and it's calm, I take my foot off the leash very subtly, but I don't detach the leash. If you detach the leash, the dog thinks, we're done, I can go back to jumping up on you, or whatever it was doing before. We wait for it to be calm and get up and walk away relaxed. Now, when it walks away, it's being dragging the leash. It's fine as long as it's supervised, but it is dangerous to be unsupervised, so don't let the dog out of your sight because it can get hung up and injure itself. If a couple minutes later he goes and does the wrong thing again, we step on the leash, we reapply the consequence. But if a couple minutes go by and he's fine, we just take the leash off. It's not quid pro quo. But what we're saying is if you are defiant, then you lose all freedom. Remember, we hissed before he does something. We stood up when he did it anyways. We marched towards him because he did it again. And he did it again, so we put him on the leash timeout. So now he was being defiant. After a while, you won't have to do the leash. It'll be just hiss, stand up, and then march, then hiss, stand up, then eventually just the hiss. I got my dog to drop a live squirrel out of her mouth the other day just by hissing at her because she knew I would take the next consequence unless she did. Always follow through. Make sure that you outlast your dog. It's going to be tough for the first couple weeks for these guardians, but once the dogs realize that humans are willing to stop whatever they're doing and get their way, they're going to start listening and obeying faster and faster. We also want to avoid repeating command words. Sometimes I tell my clients to come up with a word like rerun or repeat if we hear one of our guardians saying the command word multiple times. This is why, like, if the rule at the door is they have to sit, I go to the door and say sit once. If the dog doesn't sit, I walk away, wait 1 minute, and go back and give it another opportunity to sit the first time. If it doesn't, I walk away for 2 minutes, then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. One of the dogs likes to stay in the car and not come out. I would close the door, make sure it's not, I do it when it's nice and cool now, so we don't have to worry about overheating. Come inside, watch a football game, watch a full movie. A lot of time go by. We want the dog to be like wanting to get out of there, and then we open the door. When it gets out, as soon as it paws at the ground, give it a treat and assign a command word for them. This is kind of the opposite of what I do for dogs that don't want to go into their kennel. I'll take a marrow bone and I'll put it inside the kennel and I'll close the door with the dog outside the kennel. The dog's like pawing it. I want to get in there. Well, then we create a desire to get in there. Same way we're doing this, we're going to create a desire to get out of there. Let me see. I'd like the guardians to start feeding the dogs with, like I said, a little bit more structure, and make sure that, and we can substitute some green beans for Huber's food and help take a little bit of food off him. Hopefully they're going to go to the Green Spot and they'll talk to Jess and Whitney, who are great in Omaha, the only store that's actually owned by people who study animal nutrition as their degree, and maybe a different type of food. Also, feeding the same type of food all the time has probably got him a little bit boring. So if we switch him to another food that's also gentle on his tummy, but we can change the flavor each bag, that might create a little bit more incentive. Also, another tip is to sometimes adding hot water with the dry kibble, swirl it around. That can warm the kibble up and also makes it a little bit more appealing for dogs. They prefer warm food over cold food. Let me see. That's I'm sure I'm probably leaving some stuff out, but and don't get in the habit of make sure you're walking through the dog. Don't walk around the dog, so the dog gets used to deferring. If the dog races up and down the stairs, teach it to sit and stay at the bottom of the stairs. Walk backwards up the stairs. And as soon as the dog starts to come up the stairs, we rush down. I always do it when the dog's down, so it's easier than rushing up the stairs. And when you get to the top of the stairs, then say business, or whatever the word is that means go to the top of the stairs. So the dog starts to learn, I have to wait, watch the human go first, because whoever's in front is in charge, or is the leader. And then the human calls me and tells me when it's appropriate for me to go through. That way you don't have to worry about them racing through the doors. I'm trying to think of the name. Barney is the dog's name. So if you go to Doggone Problems and search for Barney, I have a session where I actually go over how to teach the dog to stay at the door while the door is open. If you do that, then the dogs understand just because the door's open doesn't mean I have permission to go out. And then we give each dog a separate command word that means go out the door. So maybe we say freedom for one, release for the other one. I give the dogs a unique command word for permission to eat, getting released out of a stay, or something like this, getting released out of a door. So that way I can have a conversation with one dog. If I say go, and both dogs' word is go, then they both barrel out, and then I have the same problem that we had before. Okay, well, that's going to do it for Hubert and Duke's Roadmap to Success in this special Saturday session. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.